Okay, so moving on from growth hormone onto thyroid hormone, it has implications in growth. The role of thyroid hormone in controlling growth is it's permissive for the effects of growth hormone and IGF on growth. It doesn't stimulate growth directly itself, but it allows growth hormone and IGF to work much more effectively, and so when you have enough thyroid hormone around, growth can occur normally. Without it, growth is retarded and the person doesn't thrive. Fetal growth is independent of thyroid hormone, but as I noted, and I'm going to emphasize it again, thyroid hormone is absolutely vital for the development of the neuronal tissue in this perinatal period between 23 weeks of gestation and about a year after. Without it, you get irreversible neuronal damage, and if the thyroid hormone is not reintroduced, you will also get growth development problems, not just in stature but in bone development. And early in fetal development, T3 and T4 is from the mother, and another effect that thyroid hormone has is in the ossification of bone. So for normal development of the bone, you need normal levels of thyroid hormone. And this describes what thyroid hormone does to allow for this permissive effect. Basically, thyroid hormone maintains growth hormone production by stimulating the increase in receptors for growth hormone releasing hormone on the pituitary. It also has an effect on the target organs so that they're more sensitive to growth hormone, so more receptors for growth hormone on the bone and on the liver, which results in a release of IGF. And thyroid hormone also increases the number of receptors for IGF on target organs. So the presence of thyroid hormone just makes the whole system works better by increasing receptors for the different parts, for growth hormone releasing hormone, and for IGF, and therefore making those hormones more effective at their sites. And so this then reiterates what I just said, and to summarize, the lack of growth in the absence of thyroid hormone is due to a lack of effects of growth hormone. I'm going to briefly go over the control of, or the regulation of thyroid hormone release here. Again, it is the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid gland axis that is used in this situation. And so thyrotropin releasing hormone is released from the hypothalamus down onto the pituitary, where you have thyroid stimulating hormone release, and then thyroid stimulating hormone stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormone, both T3 and T4. T4 is the hormone that's released in greater quantities, but these both feed back onto the pituitary to inhibit the release of TSH, and onto the hypothalamus to release TRH. Note that there's no short loop feedback. What this means is that TSH does not feed back to the hypothalamus or onto the pituitary to inhibit its release, and this has implications then for the production of goiters, which I'll go into in more detail after we look at the production of thyroid hormone itself. So this figure shows you how the body creates thyroid hormone in the thyroid gland, and it all starts with this sodium iodide symport, and this is where the epithelial cells of the thyroid hormone This is the basal membrane, so here we have blood flowing past, and then in the side we have the follicular lumen, and these are the epithelial cells then that trap the iodine using this transporter, and it can concentrate iodide in the epithelial cell 30 times greater than in the blood. It's very effective at doing it, and it uses the sodium gradient that's high outside and low inside in order to facilitate this trapping of iodide. And so it relies on the sodium potassium ATPase to create this gradient, and then these transporters pull iodine in. At the same time, you have thyroglobulin made in the endoplasmic reticulum, which is lots of tyrosine end on end, and then this is transported into the Golgi, and then these both are then transported, the iodide and the thyroglobulin is passed through, iodide passes through using this pendrin transporter, and thyroglobulin through vesicles into the follicular lumen of the thyroid gland. And once in there you have thyroid peroxidase that converts iodide into iodine, oxidizes iodide into iodine, and thyroglobulin is then used as the scaffold to produce monoiodine thyroxetine and diiodine thyroxetine that is then converted into T3 and T4 while attached to this thyroglobulin structure. Then once thyroid hormone is stimulated to be released, you have a hormone synthesis has already been created. You have endocytosis of thyroglobulin. This is pulled into the epithelial cell again. You have proteolysis, which cleaves the hormones, and then they are released, and then MIT and DIT are deiodinated, and the iodine is then shuffled back into the lumen of these thyroid follicles in order to create more thyroid hormone again. And then you have hormone release, and as I said before, T4 is released in greater quantities than T3. Now, the effect of thyroid stimulating hormone on the cells, the epithelial cells of the thyroid gland is shown here. It binds to its receptor, increases cyclic AMP, increases calcium, and increases growth factors, and it has a tropic effect on these cells and on the whole of the thyroid gland. And what I mean by tropic is that it increases nucleotide synthesis and protein synthesis, and this increases cell size, cell number, and the number of follicles that form. So the whole thyroid gland begins to grow, and that's what tropic means. And you get increased trapping of iodine as a result, increased colloid synthesis, and proteolysis of thyroglobulin, releasing more hormones, and you get increased glucose oxidation and NADPH generation. Essentially, TSH makes the gland work harder and grow bigger, and so it's said to have a tropic effect. And because it doesn't have this feedback effect, because TSH doesn't have a feedback loop, if there's something wrong, you don't have enough iodine, or the thyroid isn't able to release thyroid hormone, there is no feedback, and as a result you'll just get constant TSH released, and this just makes the whole thing grow. You get larger follicles, you get more and greater epithelial cells, and as a result the whole thing grows, and then with a lack of iodine you get these goiters formed. And hypothyroidism, the take-home message here for growth is that hypothyroidism in development can lead to mental retardation, stunted growth, and abnormal skeletal development.